I felt so unknown because I wasn't necessarily transitioned into the church. I was only ever with youth group.
I either balked at or just didn't even think about how important systems were.
That's been something that I for sure had to rethink.
Yeah.
Like an event doesn't transition people well with intent.
Yeah.
I have a hot take.
You know better than anyone else. Culture is changing.
Youth ministry is complicated, and it's even more difficult to do it by yourself.
So let's rethink it together.
Join us for this week's episode of Rethinking Youth Ministry.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Ashley. I'm part of the Orange Students team here, and I am so pumped to talk about moving students from one grade to the next. But before we jump in, I need you to meet the coolest group of people we may have ever had.
Where are they? Are we about to bring them up?
Yeah,
And
bring them up.
I think they're in this room right
Are they
now.
downstairs
Bring 'em
waiting?
up.
In fact, we're going to start to the left, to the left.
Hello, friends. My name is Brett. I have been working for Orange since 2016, full-time student pastor for over a decade. Before that, spent about 7 years doing being a student Orange specialist, which is sort of like the part of our organization that is kind of coaching, consultation, and I do some things organizationally a little bit differently now, but still get to hang out with the Orange Students team.
And if you've been a listener for any time in the past, you recognize his voice.
Yes, I've been
You
on a lot of
recognize his
episodes.
face, the one and only Brett Talley. Thank you very much.
I'm so excited to be on these podcasts again.
I know, right? We're so glad it's back. Brandon, throwing it to you, friend.
Hey, that's who I am. I'm Brandon, and I am from Kansas City. I work at a church called Graceway. It's literally a mile and a half from the Kansas City Chiefs stadium, which, if you did not know, Kansas City has won the last Super Bowl, and they won actually 2 out of the last 3 as well. So I get to serve as our student pastor at Graceway. Been there for a little over 2 years now, and it's a blessing and a privilege to be here with y'all.
Awesome.
Glad you're here,
Love
friend.
it. Go sports. My name is Vivi Diaz. I'm coming from Southern California. I work at a
How
church.
far do you live to your nearest NFL stadium?
Oh my gosh, quiz. I don't know where the what do they call it? The Rams? The LA Rams? I almost said the
Rams.
Chargers. They're in San Diego. I think I'm closer to the LA Rams stadium.
far.
I'm in
Okay.
Riverside. I'm at a church called Sandals Church. We're a multi-site church, so I get to serve in 2 roles. I oversee our young adults across all of our campuses, and then I get to oversee our student ministry 7th all the way through 12th at our largest campus. And it's fun. And if you didn't notice already, Brett is holding a baseball, which
A 2-seam.
He looks like
actually.
he's about to pitch it.
I know. I was like, I don't know if I spoiled that, but I was like,
I'm just-
someone's
Are you
got to
going to do
acknowledge
something
it.
with it?
Uh-oh.
No,
So-
I just like
Is
to
it a
have.
tick?
It's like a fidget. It's like a grown man fidget toy. Is the best way that I
All
can
All right,
explain
your
it.
challenge
Like I
is
said, go
Glitter.
sports.
you need to work that into this conversation
Okay.
about moving students from one grade to the next. Somehow this baseball
We're throwing
is
the split
going to
finger right
be
there.
some
There's
kind
a
of an
little
illustration.
splitty right
Make
here.
the pitch.
Yes. Oh. All right, I'll take it. Okay, let's jump in.
great.
What we have learned is that this very thing we're going to talk about is called a lot of different things at a lot
Yeah.
of different churches.
Done a
So
lot of different ways,
Yes.
called a lot of different things.
It is, and there's no right or wrong way to do it
Yeah.
or a right or wrong thing to call it. But just so we're all on the same page, what do y'all call this? Moving students from one grade to the next in your context.
Oh, I'll go first. Okay, so we call it promotion, moving 6th graders into 7th grade. So they're elementary now to middle school. And then when they graduation, seniors into young adulthood. Which notice that I didn't mention anything about our young 8th graders to high schoolers. Which that'll be something that I'm here to talk about rethinking. Hey-o.
There we go.
Oh, I'm interested.
That's
I'm
right.
coming back to
Some
you.
of that is because the context I'm in, we run 7th through 12th grade together.
Okay.
So that's partially why.
Yeah.
It's good.
Right on. Well, we actually call it the same thing. We call it promotion as well. But when I'm throwing around the lingo of what that promotion looks like, I talk about it being a transition period.
Yeah.
So we say promotion is the specific day that it actually takes place. So in our context, where we're at in Kansas City, I do student ministries with middle school and high school, but it's 2 separate ministries. So we're talking about promotion from 5th graders into middle school, so 6th grade, and then 8th graders going into high school, but then also the handoff of the seniors going into the young adult ministry as well. So
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, promotion. 2 votes for promotion here.
right.
Move up Sunday. I've heard it called
Sunday.
Move Up Sunday before, like whenever that promotion Sunday is, like, hey, this is the day that you go to the new.
Or promotion Sunday.
Yeah, promotion Sunday, Move Up
Graduation
Sunday,
Sunday.
graduation Sunday. Yeah.
Transition Sunday.
It's great.
Didn't think
So what
So
did
do
you
we
call
have a
it though
winner?
when you were in student ministries?
Promotion Sunday.
Promotion. Okay.
Yeah, just.
I think we
Thank you.
called it Move Up.
Okay.
We called
Did
it
you
Move
do
Up.
Move
Funny is,
Up?
I think we started out calling it Move Up, and now that I'm thinking, I'm like, when did we start being dull and calling it promotion?
Well, I almost said Move On Sunday, and I was like, well, that sounds a little morbid. I don't think that was
Yeah.
it. Move On Sunday.
Toodles.
They've moved on
Peace
to.
out,
They've
Sunday.
moved on to a better place.
Okay, I'm challenging the name here. Maybe I'm by myself in this, but like, does promotion feel like you're going to something better?
Better, yeah. Does it downgrade whatever they're coming from?
The irony in adulthood, heck yeah,
Yeah,
I want to be
absolutely, I agree.
promoted. But
Yeah.
to students, it feels so dull.
No, I mean, I think
Personally.
that I do, because so we work with middle schoolers at our church now. We volunteer in our middle school ministry, and every year we get those incoming sixth graders, and we talk about what we want their middle school experience to be like, and we ask them questions about what they're excited about for middle school ministry. They always talk about how excited they are to not be in kids ministry anymore. So I think that. For the most part, I don't think it's 100%, but for the most part, I think most students do see it as a
Yes.
promotion into something new, into something fresh, into something where they get treated a little bit older. But it also could come across negative to your kids ministry volunteers or your kids ministry staff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a bad lens to just at least think through.
Okay, so what about for the kids? This is just me throwing a curveball.
There we go.
Did I just work
Here's,
it in?
There it
here's
is.
our curve.
I'm
That's
throwing
a
a
curve.
curveball.
I prefer the knuckle curve personally.
But what about for the kids who like don't get promoted in their school grade?
Oh.
Do they still get promoted in their?
Well, you start with partnering with parents
Oh, there we
Absolutely.
go.
Come on.
and figure out how to best support the family.
That's right. It's a wraparound,
What a safe
right?
answer.
It depends.
Yeah. That's good.
That was
Yeah, I think no. I really do think it does. Like, what grade is it happening? What age is it happening?
Yeah.
Is it is it? Because we've had students who have been held back, and then they move into a charter situation. They move into a homeschool situation.
Say homeschoolers.
Essentially to catch up, and then they end up kind of back on track of where
Yeah.
they were originally. But if it happens in second grade and it's something that their family is okay with, and that's kind of going to be the rhythm for their whole family moving forward, then
Yeah.
it seems like that is something that you then begin shift around what their experience is, so that they're with their peers.
Or
That
you-
makes sense.
Or you got the families that do homeschool their kids by choice, and in school wise they might be in sixth grade, but like age wise they're in fifth grade.
Yeah.
So the parents want them to be in the middle school ministry, but yet mentality wise they're elementary.
That's a great point.
As
Yeah.
well. So you saying that as
Yeah.
being goofy, Vivi, that's
But honestly,
like,
that's how I've
real.
navigated it.
That's literally
It's
real
true.
tension,
All right.
right? So
I would say
I
these are
stand
home run
corrected.
answers.
yeah.
Oh, girl. Okay.
Wow.
The one who was
I'm
like,
embarrassed.
go sports
Go
at the
sports!
beginning.
Right.
She's
Here
going to
she
have the
is.
most amount of sports references. Just
gonna-
kidding.
she's
Ashley's
gonna
a
get-
3. She's definitely going to have the most amount
I
of
was
these.
gonna say, she's
whole
gonna get the
time.
most RBIs here.
Well, you guys think I'm thinking about the conversation. I'm thinking what baseball references.
Right.
So if you
man.
just go silent, we know you'll be with us in a moment.
That's right. She's coming back.
You're out for the
Exactly.
seventh inning
She's-
stretch.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay. Let's bring it back.
Back to this. Vivi, I would love to hear from you. What hangs in the balance of us getting this right? Like, why does this conversation even matter?
You know, I actually love that you framed it like that. Why does this matter? Personally, I was the kid that didn't grow up going to church. So I started getting involved, and I got immediately, well, not immediately, let's be real. I eventually got involved into youth group as a junior. And so I was so well known by my youth pastor, his wife, the youth leaders, the youth ministry. But when I graduated, they moved to San Diego. And I'm from the Bay Area. So when I went back to my home church after my first year in college, I felt so unknown because I wasn't necessarily transitioned into the church. I was only ever with youth group. So I think it matters because we don't just care about a student's faith while they're with us. We care about the spiritual formation in their lives, you know?
So good.
So I think calling it promotion or just having a strategy, it's just intentionally thinking about students keeping the faith that we spend investing in.
I think that idea of strategy is such an important thing to remember. Like Ash, you even said promotion Sunday, and that can be the mentality that we have, where it's a day, it's a time, it's a moment of transition,
an event,
and there's not necessarily a strategy around how do we help usher the parents, the students themselves through these kind of milestone moments and through these transitions in what their ministry experience is, with the goal and effort of not only helping them develop a resilient, vibrant, everyday faith of their own, but also how do we help integrate them into an all-church intergenerational experience where it's not always just I think that we talk about that at Orange a lot, is we do think there is such value in phase-specific experiences that they have. But we also have to be careful about the ways that throughout the years, we're also integrating them into an all-church experience so they don't graduate high school having been really connected to the kids ministry, then the preteen ministry, then the middle school ministry, then the high school ministry. But now I don't know what it means to be a part of a church. But how are we intentional throughout this entire breadth of a strategy to make sure that when we launch them into whatever is next after high school, that they know what they're looking for and what their role is in it.
And I think that even with that too, with the promotion Sunday, they build off of each other every year or through every phase or whatnot, whatever that looks like in your context. And with that being said, we can make it this big event on one Sunday a year or whenever it is for you when you do your promotion or transition or move up, whatever that looks like. We put all our eggs into one basket and make it about the moment or just that one thing. But what will they remember from that one thing as well? And I say this a lot to our students is like we have to allow the moments to be turned into movements as well. So it's so important. So what movement is getting ready to start? Like what trajectory are they headed into when they have that promotion, whether it's every year, every grade that they do transition to the next grade level, or maybe every like school age, whether it's middle school, high school, or young adults, what is the next thing that they're going into? Because that's what's going to stick. They should be able to look back on these promotions and see, okay, well, that was a huge milestone in my life. And in that, I'm going to get a little biblical in here. You know, we need to make altars in those things, right? And the altars are for us to look back upon and remember, but then also the altars are set up for the next people to come and see as well and remember what is to come as well. So I think that's so important that we do that as well. So as you're saying this, Vivi, like it's so crucial for me to rethink that as well, that it's not just something that it's obviously once a year, but how is it going to point them in the right direction for the rest of their life, and not just in student ministries, but even young adults and when they become a grown adult living in society that making their own decisions and everything.
I love that, Brandon. I love the idea of making it a big enough deal that it becomes like a milestone marker for them so they can look back. I want to actually unpack that more. But before we do, I want to go back to something Brett said when you were talking about just the name in and of itself. Promotion Sunday is just about one Sunday, one event. And you brought up something that might be a new thought for some of our listeners, but the idea of having maybe more than one Sunday involved or a period of time. And that might be a new thought for people. So can you unpack that a little bit more for us?
Yeah, I think to me that idea of, promotion strategy being better than just promotion Sunday is that there's an intentionality of it not just being, from 5th grade to 6th grade, from elementary to high school. And there's one day where that's a big deal and you come in and then there's, especially if you're combined, then there's nothing from 6th grade or 7th grade until you graduate. But really thinking through not even just necessarily those those obvious leaps from, okay, we're going from elementary to middle school or from preteen to middle school, but thinking through the phases and that milestone language that you're talking about and asking yourself, what altars do we need to create? Mm-hmm. And to me, that's where the strategy comes in.
Yep.
The strategy comes in by saying, what are these moments? What are these times? And we need to help build these altars. We need to help build these milestones. We need to help build these experiences around those. And to me, the idea of strategy is we talk about strategy as, beginning with the end in mind around here. So if that's who we want our students to be, the kind of faith that we want them to be able to have an experience by the time they're 18, as we start thinking backwards all the way through down into, our pre-K environments, what are those milestones that we want them to have? What are those things that we want to be a big deal, that we want to be intentional about inviting parents in, that we want to be intentional about how is our volunteer structure set up to be able to walk with families through these full seasons of life and not just a year at a time? I don't know if any of this is actually answering your question, but to me, that whole idea of strategy is just that we're not just thinking about how is this event going to take place, but okay, if that event for you happens the first week of June, or if it happens the first week of September, go back 3 months. Yep. What do we need to be doing now? Yep. What are the conversations that we need to be having? How are we preparing the students? How are we preparing the volunteers? How are we preparing the parents when it's February? Yep. That's one of the things that I know that we feel the tension a lot around here is how do we help when I was in full-time student ministry, I oftentimes wouldn't even start thinking about promotion until the end of the school year. And by then it's too late. It is just it's an event. It's a moment. It's not a strategy. It's not a movement. And so there's that tension of if we wait until something is a felt need, then we're probably not going to be able to build a strategy around it. Yeah. And so how do we build the margin and the bandwidth in our own minds and our schedules to be able to start thinking about recruiting back in January, February, to be thinking about promotion back in January, February, so that we have time to build a strategy around implementing it well.
It makes me think of kind of how we've shifted where there's, if we think about volunteers, for example, we have Recruitment Sunday, where everybody's like, energy towards trying to find new volunteers for your ministry has kind of shifted into more of a strategy of it's recruiting season, or here's the recruiting strategy for volunteers all year long. And what you're saying is we need to have that same approach for our transition.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh yeah,
and
100%.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. So what's that look like at your churches?
Yeah. So you talked about planning. By December, that's when I start really locking it. All the dates and everything for promotion are locked in at the beginning of school year. But December, during that winter break, I really utilize that to really, we're turning that signal heading into second semester.
Yep.
I just leverage the heck out of second semester. And I think, moving from thinking promotion as just an event or a weekend to more of a on-ramp.
Yeah.
What's our promotion on-ramp? So for us, it looks like as soon as we're second semester, that's when we start sending a once a month parent email to even our new 6th grade parents of, hey, this is what's coming. I would say the hard shift is right after spring break. And that's when we do 4 big touches for our 7th graders. Let me pull them up real quick. One of them being visiting our kids' classes on the weekends. And there's a 3-week on-ramp for that even, where each of those weeks are different. But to me, it's building trust. Because to say here you go, here are your new youth people, it's super intimidating. Yeah. And a lot of these 6th graders it's the combination of excited but super nervous. Yeah. And the bold ones are willing to admit it. But yeah, so we've got a 3-week lead up. I love getting to do I call it a 7th grade meet and greet, because a distinctive for us is, truthfully, anything below the age of 18, we are teaching dependent individuals how to follow Jesus. And so obviously that differentiates according to the phase, but it means parents are important. So we're also transitioning parents into the next phase. I love telling parents, hey, your new seventh grader, they're going to be in a group with probably some of the kids that will be their lifelong friends. So you need to know their parents. So we do like a seventh grade meet and greet, which is both for the kids and the parents. So just meet and greet, very casual, kind of fun stuff. That's the second one. Third big touch point is we have like a middle school late night. So that's like seventh and eighth grade. It's kind of like the big fun thing. And that's like the 2 weeks after their first Wednesday night. And so it just kind of like eases them in, like, cool. We might not know everybody yet, but at least we know the eighth graders. And then we do like a parent preview night, their first like Wednesday night. And so those are all lead ups. I think the communication plan is so crucial.
Absolutely.
Keeping parents informed, being available on the weekends, like having designated like meetup spots. Hey, we're here for questions. Yeah. But we really use that. And even right now, like we're in April, we've got all of our new seventh grade leaders locked in right now, which is just nice because it's all about, I think, setting everyone up for success. Your student ministry team, your leader team, the new leaders, the parents. But yeah, it definitely takes some planning. And that's been something I for sure had to rethink. Yeah. Like an event doesn't transition people well with intent.
Right. Yeah.
You may have fun, but yeah. Sorry, that was a lot.
No, that's great.
So we do sort of the same thing that Vivi was talking about with it being a transition period. And then the promotion is when that happens, like it goes into place. So it's a few months before the promotion that it takes place. And it really starts with getting with the children's ministry and getting with the children's pastor around those fifth graders and talking about them and even talking about, the ones that have been there and the ones that haven't been there and asking why, getting those questions answered. And so like with us, we use a database called CCB, which we're blessed to have that because we can pull reports from people checking in. Now, I didn't always have CCB, so you might be saying, well, what can I use to be able to do that? I've used Google Docs.
Totally.
I've went, some of us are still using spreadsheets where you print them off and you check by their name, so it's really looking at the data of who has been coming or whatnot, and then also going into having the communications with their parents as well. So starting with the children's pastor or director, just to touch base about the incoming sixth graders is huge.
That is huge.
Yeah.
I hope, you guys are catching that like you can't do this on your own. Don't silo youth ministry.
Absolutely.
Like team up with your kids' people. Because even what I was sharing, like that didn't get formed just from my brain. It was like a collaboration with our kids' people.
Absolutely. And now that I'm in the setting that I'm in now, it's I'm actually blessed to say that our children's pastor is all about that as well. Where he's like, hey, let's get together, let's set this up, and where we can talk about the incoming sixth graders. You should be getting X amount of students, if they transition into, the middle school ministry. So it's really starting with that. Then it's sending out communications to parents, having those times where they can ask questions as well. And then also inviting those fifth graders going into sixth grade to come down for service as well to see the environment, because it is different. It's a culture shock for them, elementary, there's no shade thrown at all. But with the middle school ministry, we're not doing hand gestures and worship and whatnot. And some of them, that's different, don't get me wrong. Most fifth graders or upper elementary, they're like, I'm too cool for this anyways. They're the ones being goofy during service in the kids ministry, but it's new for them. They're seeing that we're actually going a little bit deeper with the songs and with the lyrics of the songs as well. So them coming down to see the student or the middle school ministry for that age group is very crucial. And then after that, it's, hey, we have a meet and greet, or it's a Friday night where they come and hang out with the leaders and myself and my wife and just hang out and get to know us, and we get to know them a little bit more. But then the promotion Sunday, it usually takes place in June for us and for our context. And then like they start coming to Wednesday nights. They're done with school, start coming to Wednesday nights, go to middle school service on Sunday mornings. And then they go to youth camp as well, or they get the option to go to youth camp as incoming sixth graders. We allow them to do that. And then go ahead. You gonna say something?
I've got like a zillion things.
I know, man. Right?
I'm sorry, man.
No, it's so good. Like the two things that keep coming to mind. If these transitions are going to be successful, then what? It's based on it being relational.
Yeah.
And the next phase, whatever they're being promoted or transitioning into, that it's relevant.
Yeah.
That those two things have to be working together. And that's one of the reasons why having a camp soon after a transition is so important, because when we all know what happens, whether it's a week, whether it's a weekend, it can, more can happen relationally and spiritually in a weekend than it can all year long.
That's right.
And so I love that. I also keep coming back to some things that you're saying. So it needs to be relational. It needs to be relevant. In student ministry, I think that we often think if something has to be relational, it has to be organic. And when we build systems that allow for relationships to thrive, we're more effective at creating connections through relationships. So when you're talking about we're keeping track of attendance, and we're looking at database, and we're looking and we have these systems designed to tell us who has been a part of our community, who do we need to be intentional about reaching out to, who do we need to be connecting them to in relationship. We have to have these systems built out in order for us to actually be able to prioritize the relationships that we have. I think for so long in ministry, I either balked at or just didn't even think about how important systems were in our ministry. And then when I started to recognize and begin to implement those, it really began. I always talked about, systems help us determine. A reactive system helps us to answer the question, what do we do if, or what do we do when? And then a proactive system answers the question of, what do we want to make sure happens? And what do we want to make sure happens when a fifth grader transitions into sixth grade? Okay, what system do we need to build in order for that to happen? And for whatever reason, I know for me in student ministry, I just didn't think about that. And when those systems were in place and we started to build those, it was far more likely that we were going to start seeing the results that we wanted to see. And
the retention too, right? And I know we've spoken a lot about that middle school transition, right? But then there's other transitions from grade level phases or whatnot, or even middle school to high school. And for us in our context, we kind of mirror the same thing, but it just looks differently for the relevancy of the age or whatnot. And then obviously for seniors going to graduate, there's a whole nother process that takes place of trying to get them connected to the young adult ministry. We also celebrate them. We throw, it's also like a 4-week transition period as well, where they go visit the young adults ministry. We throw a graduation party for them by the student ministry, where both middle school and high school are involved with, because in our setting, middle school and high school ministry is not together. So it's two separate ministries, but we do come together to celebrate our seniors so that they can see that as well. And then we also do a dinner with the young adults pastor, his wife, and also some of his key leaders, and then myself and my wife, as like, hey, this is like a handoff type of thing. So in all of these transitions and promotion, whatnot, the big thing about it is not just the handoff, but it's about the receival as well. So for student ministries, it's about how we receive those students. But then also when they're going into young adults, like Vivi's setting too, where you're doing young adults as well, it's about handoff to them to be able to receive as well. So we always got to be thinking about that as well.
That's so good.
That's so good. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So you mentioned that you guys do your promotion in June. Viv, when do you guys
June
do
as well.
In June? So what's I know, essentially there's 2 times that this tends to happen. It's either at the beginning of summer or it's at the beginning of fall.
I have a hot take.
Okay, I want to hear kind of the strategy behind why you guys choose summer and what the pros and cons might be for summer versus doing that promotion in fall. Let's start with the hot take.
Okay, so all the other grades would transition in like
school year.
June. Yeah. Okay. So I'm talking about the transition into middle school.
Okay.
All right. So every other grade in the church would transition when school got out in June, right? But what I was noticing was the drop off. And I also was like feeling the importance of parents moving into the middle school ministry from preteen. And the first church I served at that I'm talking about right now, we did have a unique preteen environment for 4th, 5th, and 6th. And my middle school environment was 7th and 8th.
Okay.
But just like, I mean, depending on how your grades are broken up, like that 6th grade year is so hard. And maybe it's the 5th graders for you. But what we decided to do was to make the 6th grade transition into the middle school ministry, the 7th and 8th grade, happen in February.
Wow.
And it was the only grade that transitioned different than every other grade.
Now that's a change up.
It was a hot take. And we did it because what we were learning was second semester 6th graders is where they would drop off. And so what we did was we would catch them in the transition before they dropped off.
Wow.
And so we strategically planned an event in February. And so we would start going to the preteen environment in the year before, talking about it, building that relationship to help bridge it. And it was, several, weeks long. But then they would come to that event and their parents were already prepared and they would make the transition into the middle school ministry in a totally different way. And the whole church was on board for it.
Wow.
So everyone in the church was helping that transition because it was so critical.
So every year your preteen ministry starts the school year 3 grades and ends the school year 2 grades. And your middle school ministry starts the school year 2 grades and ends the school year 3 grades.
Which is so much harder logistically.
Yeah, in my head, I'm like, so what is that team doing?
It totally is, but it worked so great.
Okay, so you guys don't do February. You do the beginning of summer.
Yeah.
What are some of the strategy reasons?
I'm more of a March
behind
1st girl. Just kidding.
March 1st.
I mean, truthfully for us, it's lining up with school districts and even thinking like, because truthfully, I don't feel like a new 7th grader is really a new 7th grader till that new school year starts.
I agree.
So we even leverage the summer. Like I'm even thinking with our 7th grade leaders, they're the only leaders that I give them like a 3-month what to expect.
Yeah.
Because that really like helps them like, what should my summer look like? Because summer season's just different. You got summer camp right in the middle, which is such a fun thing for the 7th grader. But that leader could have such a skewed view of what ministry looks like. So it's almost like, yes, they're officially allowed to come to everything in June because it lines up with school. But I don't even think mentally they even feel like a 7th grader till the new school year.
Okay, another hot take.
Yeah.
In every grade, in my opinion, it's not about when they start the school year. It's the Christmas break. So that's when they change.
So I actually agree with that. I even agreed with that as like a student. Or are you talking about the Christmas break prior or when they're in it?
No, like I think it's when they're in it.
Yeah,
Totally, I agree.
I think
a
it's
sixth grade.
it's when they're coming back from Christmas
is
break.
a 5th grade boy in November, and they're a 6th grade boy in
Yeah, I
January.
agree.
Yes.
My wife-
I think that's a bigger transition.
I agree.
Yeah, my wife is a
Entirely.
1st grade teacher, and she even says that you notice the difference there, where like after Christmas
They're
break,
comfortable.
like something just switches where they're just ready for what's next, type of thing. So I agree.
Yeah. But their parents,
wild,
that's
though.
kind of what I'm thinking of. Their parents, like,
The
they're
parents aren't ready.
Yeah.
Mentally.
The parents, right.
My baby.
How about you guys? Is it similar, like, because they graduate, that's when you...
Yeah, and it's new for me being in the setting I'm in now. It is new because we didn't used to do... Previous churches, I didn't do transition until like when they were about to start the school year. So it's like, hey, yeah, you finished 5th grade, but you're not in 7th grade or 6th grade until you go into 6th grade type of thing. I was that type of technical thinker, and that's just the way the church operated. But right now in the setting that we are in, it is, hey, when you finish 5th grade, you can expect to go into 6th grade in the middle school ministry where it's coming out on Sunday services where we have middle school services, which where we're in an urban area, so like first service is more church folk that grew up in the church. When our second service, it's more folks that are unchurched and need a little extra more love and intentionality. So we're seeing that too, even with the incoming grade levels, with the incoming 6th graders too. So
sorry, go ahead. Well, I was gonna kind of move into young adult things.
Okay, well, so let me say it real quick. I don't know that there's like a wrong or a right time to do it. I think it just matters where the priority is, where your strategy is. Going to what you said, if you guys didn't have systems in place to recognize that that's when drop off was happening,
Recognize
you
the
wouldn't have even
trends.
known. And for you, that would there was a priority there. That was the win. That made sense. I know for us in my last church, we always kind of talked about what should we do, and we always kept with the beginning of August, which is when our school started. Because for us, it was all about, we did a big, we had a pretty big summer camp strategy that summer. And for us, the focus was around how do we finish well. So especially like when we think about, high school ministry or middle school ministry, if it's their 8th grade year, we wanted them to have another year of, we did a very specific middle school work camp trip that was kind of like their mission trip, their summer camp, all wrapped into one. And there were just some really unique, really special things that happened their 3rd year through that if they would have kind of just jumped into a brand new what we were doing in high school over the summers, we just didn't feel like it was going to be as effective. The church that I'm volunteering at now, we transition the very beginning of June because they do a specific 6th grade only camp that happens pretty quickly, in August. So you've got kind of a couple months and then you jump right into 6th grade camp, and they want you to have some relationships built in your small groups before you go to that camp experience to then hopefully solidify the relationships in the group. So
help parents feel comfortable sending their kids
exactly
away.
before they send 6th graders away to a sleepaway camp, and they've maybe never done that before.
Right.
So I think that I don't think that this is a like
which one?
Hey, whichever promotion time you choose, it's probably wrong. You should choose the other one, but you should have some strategic reasons on why you're doing what you're doing, and you should be open to are there wins if we get outside the box and we make this change in February?
Yeah. That's so good.
A decision like that touches a lot of things. Parents,
a lot of ripple
volunteers,
effects.
there's a lot of a lot of things we learned and mistakes we made in it. But I'm glad we took the chance.
Yeah.
That's good.
Speaking of, any chances y'all are wanting to take when it comes to moving students from one grade to the next? Anything you've been wanting to try?
Oh, well, so that's kind of what I was going to share. So I'm freshly into a young adult role. In 2022, I stepped into it. And again, I'm multi-site. So I'm like, truthfully, rethinking everything about it, strategy, vision, direction. So I am in my experimenting era, if you will, which is so fun. And I love, shout out to my church leadership for the trust to do that. But one thing that I've kind of pulled the plug on is, our summer camp, we used to do there was a young adult night for all of our seniors. And I pretty quickly, we're not going to do that, because a senior is not mentally thinking, oh, I'm a senior now at the start of my before I've even started senior year. And not just because, or to what you were saying, because there's a right or wrong, but it didn't fit with the strategy that I'm building. Whereas for us now, a lot of the partnership with youth and young adults is we are still going to bake in a experience similar to my 6th to 7th kind of experience, relational type thing. We're still going to do stuff like that, touch points. But the biggest thing is rhythms. Instead of events, rhythms. And a lot of that being I mentioned this briefly earlier, that truthfully, before you're 18, we're teaching dependent individuals how to follow Jesus. Whereas the difference is when they're 18 and up, they're independent, theoretically. Okay, let's be real.
Right.
But so it's instead of just an event, how can we start teaching them rhythms that will continue when they're no longer dependent on anybody? Good. So that looking like, hey, when you're a senior in your senior semester, and again, all of this is, we haven't super tried it yet. Next school year will be the first year, but it's seniors, you are leading your groups. So your leaders are now more like your coaches that also attend your small group, but you are leading your group. When you're a junior, you can start, and we want to push you to start leading a 5th or 6th grade group, like in kids ministry, so that you could potentially be the new 7th grade leader. So things like that are really emphasized around rhythms, rather than hey, do this event. And that's still going to happen because it's still important, the relationship, but really teaching somebody rhythms so that when they graduate, hey, nothing changes. This is why we're doing it. This is how to do it. Not just, this is what you do. Yeah. And again, that's all experimenting. I'll tell you guys how it works, if it fails or not.
Yeah, let us know.
But that's been a rethinking, which has also kind of inspired me to rethink, what does that look like for 7th grade? What does that look like going into 9th grade? What are just different distinctives that we could capitalize on based on the phase they're in? I don't know.
That's so good. Brandon, I said I was going to come back to you about the milestone memories and moments, and just making a big deal of them. What, for someone who's listening, who's I want to try to do that. Yeah. What is 1 or 2 things they can try to turn the volume up on that?
I would say even for, let's say, graduating seniors, something that would speak volumes if you're able to, whether it's your personal budget, church budget, or your leaders come alongside as well. But if you're able to give those seniors a gift, I think that speaks volumes of how much they're appreciated and how much you love them as well. Or even writing a card or having the student ministries write a card for them or sign a card or whatnot for the ones that are graduating. We tend to put something out, whether it's a piece of paper on the night of our graduation party, and we allow the seniors to bring their poster boards with their pictures and everything like that. And then at each of their placemats or placings, we put paper or a card or something where students can write encouraging notes or something for them. So, and then our leaders do it as well. And I love that because that's something that they literally can go back to and that they can literally something very tangible, right? And something very practical that those days or those moments that they do feel like given up or do feel like they've dropped the ball, they can go back to, hey, the student ministry on this night, May 24th or whatever it is, they honored me. And I'm going to read some of those notes because right now I'm feeling like crap, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to read some of those and just get encouragement from that. So that's literally a monument or a altar that they can go back to. And thinking about it, like I have a words of affirmation file myself, so it's like, why can't students have that and why shouldn't they? So I think it's very important that, they have those. So
That's so good.
awesome.
We do a senior retreat. And so we used to do it in April, and now this semester we did it at the end of January. And one of the things that actually just my campus did was we asked like parents, important figures, coaches, teachers, etc., to write them letters and kind of do like hey, just as a campus, we're gonna gift you with the Bible, and then here are letters. And that's something so simple, like that doesn't cost you a dime. It just costs you your time a little bit, but it's so worth it.
And even thinking more about that too, like if you're doing small groups, you can have your small group do it. And give your leader some post-it notes, give your leader some index cards, right? And say, hey, I want each of you to have your students in your small group to write an encouraging note about John, about Bill, about Tiffany, about whoever. And it could be 5 notes that they get. It can be 10 notes, and then obviously you ask the leaders to help do that as well. But if you can't do the whole group, I think that's a very practical thing that you can do as well.
That's good.
That's really good.
I have a few things that, so I feel like I have a unique position of, my world has been student ministry, but we had this, transition years ago from being on staff full-time ministry to doing ministry on Orange's side and then being able to be a volunteer. And so I feel like being able to view ministry from this lens has caused me to rethink some things. One of them that I love, Chef Tom Shafshunas, who, a friend of ours who's been on the podcast for, multiple times. He always talked about how he led middle school ministry at his church for a long time. And he always talked about how, like specifically for 6th graders, he wanted 6th graders, when they went to 6th grade camp, he wanted them to have the best camp experience they've ever had, but not the best camp experience they'll ever have.
Oh, I love that.
And so he always talked about this great strategy of how do we make sure that there is this progression of experiences that our students have as they go through our ministry. And for someone who I've come from ministries that were both combined middle school and high school together for a lot of different reasons, and then separated for a lot of different reasons. And in those seasons where we were combined, it can be really difficult to create experiences that feel relevant consistently for 6th or 7th graders and for 11th and 12th graders at the same time, especially for those 11th or 12th graders who have been a part of it since they were 6th and 7th graders. I mean, being 12 years old and being 18 years old, like that's only 6 years, that's 1/3 of your life, but it feels a whole lot like, more than 1/3 of your life when you're that age. And so that has really challenged me to rethink, even in combined environments, we might only have the quote unquote big promotion from, preteen or elementary into middle school, and then not again until after they graduate. But what are those moments that we need to be really intentional and careful about, where their experience shifts a little bit, or where it changes a little bit? Viv, I love what you said. Obviously, there's the 8th grade into 9th grade for high school. But I think that for me, I'll just say, I so missed the mark with that 10th to 11th grade transition, and how vital that is to begin to shift the ownership of their faith and of their experience and of their group. And what does it look like to be able to sit down with your, incoming junior small group leaders and say, hey, this is where your role shifts. This is what you've been doing. Here's your job description. And this is where things are going to start to shift. And then you even sit down with some of your key 11th graders, incoming 11th graders, and say, hey, this is what your experience has been like so far. Here's where we're going to ask it to shift. Here's where you've got more opportunity, more responsibility, more ownership. Here's what we're asking of you. I don't feel like I did those things well. And just from my seat and what I've been able to see and experience from this perspective, those are definitely things that I have rethought that I would definitely do different.
Hey, thanks for that, man. Appreciate that vulnerability too.
Yeah.
Just thank you.
I even think, sometimes we feel like the pressure has to be around, I have to have a transition strategy for every single grade level. But what if the strategy is just moments, or even programmatically? Like my team right now, our youth team, or kind of even rethinking through how can we leverage maybe once a month? Because again, we're a combined ministry. So, and I would encourage, if you're middle school only, high school only, think about what you can do in those ministries that a combined can't, and vice versa. So one of the pros of a combined is, hey, when you're in 11th grade, we love for you to actually basically like big sister, big brother vibe a 7th grade group for like one week in a 4-week series, and be able to just almost lead them. So like almost introducing like moments like that. So again, it's not some big on-ramp or strategy like I shared earlier, but sometimes it's just a strategic moment that we're right now, like that's stuff that we're just kind of rethinking, like what are opportunities we're just not leveraging that we should be.
We've thrown a lot of ideas on the table, definitely. But what I think we've all stacked hands on through all these ideas is that moving students from one grade to the next involves a lot of different groups of people, from ministry leaders to your volunteers to the parents. So I would love to know your thoughts. Like, let's talk about each of those groups. What does everything that we just talked about mean for us as ministry leaders, for our volunteers that we lead, and for the parents that we partner with? So let's start with the ministry leaders. What does it mean for us as ministry leaders?
I mean, I think some of what we've already talked about, it means we have to be intentional about it.
I was going to say the planning.
It means that we can't let it sneak up on us. It has to be something that we're putting on our calendar months and months ahead of time, that we're being really intentional about. Both in the group that we are beginning to ramp off, and then also in thinking about how we're creating the on-ramp for that next group that's coming in.
In collaboration with other ministry leaders. This should be something that you're hand in hand with your kids' team and your next phase after high school.
I think with that, it's having, I don't know if you know, SOPs, like having standard operating procedures in place. So like literally writing down what is it that we're going to do as ministry leaders. And then it's like, hey, we tweak this every year, you know, we chew the meat, spit out the bones, right? Same for you, anything that's being said today, chew the meat and spit out the bones, whatever's beneficial for you, take and use it and apply it to your settings as well. And, but we have these things, and then we can pass it to the next ministry leader as well. Like having a playbook is very key. I mean, being multi-site, I'm sure you got to do that.
I think it's so relieving even to hear you say, write it down. Because all of us, if you've never thought about this might be a really overwhelming topic. But the beautiful thing about transition is theoretically, you're never going to have 7th graders repeat. So you could use the same, this is the plan every year. And then you're just revising it and innovating.
Making it better.
Mm-hmm. And so it gets it's actually a more relieving thought. Just might take some legwork at the beginning.
All right, volunteers. Let's summarize. What does it mean for our volunteers that we lead?
if we want to be able to transition or promote and do all those things efficiently, then we have to communicate with our teams.
Yeah.
That's so good. It makes me think of, I hadn't thought about this moment till this moment. But I communicating to our volunteers, like the tone we set and the precedent we set helps communicate to them. So like, for example, our volunteers for our 6th and 7th graders, like they would see the 8th graders for, as we were moving the 8th graders up to high school, like it was a fully led 8th grade service that they were aiming for at the end of their 8th grade year. The host was an 8th grader, the teachers were 8th grader, everyone in the band was 8th grade. They led the whole service for the middle school ministry. What was really cool was because that was like a tradition, it communicated to the volunteers when a student talked about wanting to get involved, they knew they were aiming for that transition and that opportunity. Awesome. And so I was just thinking like, the milestone markers that we create for grades is a way we communicate with our volunteers for what they're aiming for and pointing their students towards.
It's good.
Yeah. I think another thing that comes to mind is just, it almost feels implicit, but I think it needs to be said, is the role of a youth leader at its core is discipleship. So whether your youth ministry model is your volunteers are always 6th grade leaders or always 7th grade leaders and just the students are transitioning, or if you've got a model like myself where the leaders follow with, regardless of, the goal is discipleship. So my role as a discipler, what does that look like if my students are leaving in proximity, but I'm staying? And what does it look like if, and that should look like a sending out almost model, but the relationship doesn't change, but the dynamic of it does, versus hey, what does it look like now we're in a new phase and how do we lead them differently, which all goes down to communication. But I think if a youth leader gets and understands what their role is at the core, it makes it a lot easier to contextualize what you're communicating.
That's if they get that, and if they also understand the phase that they're walking into with their students, it is, for a middle-aged man, it's very easy to be like, well, 6th grader, 7th grader, 8th grader, like what's the difference?
Wait, Brett, are you middle-aged?
I'm totally middle-aged. I'm 39 years old. I hope I make it to 80, but who knows?
Hey.
But so when it comes to those volunteers that, especially as they're kind of transitioning from grade to grade, I mean, like, how amazing. I know this doesn't necessarily happen all the time, but if you've got some leaders that started with a group in 1st grade and they're continuing to transition, all throughout it can sometimes be misleading that we're like, I know these students. I've been with these elementary age kids since they were in 1st grade.
Yep.
But what you don't know is what happens in the brain and the development of a 6th grader. Or maybe you do know in some ways, but our phase guides, for instance, are a really low-hanging fruit example. We'll put some links to those in the show notes. But so even for those leaders who have the relationship, and for parents, I don't know, I'm kind of jumping a little bit, but even for parents who are like, oh, they're my 5th grader. Like I know my 5th grader, but do you know what your 5th grader has in store for them when they become a 6th grader? How can we resource and equip our volunteers and our parents to best understand what to expect in that phase? So when those difficult times do come, then they're not, wringing their hands and walking out feeling like they've totally lost for the day, but they knew that those kind of experiences were coming.
You just gave me an idea. I'm like, my team, we've thought about doing like bookend trainings with our leaders, like the new ones and then how to send out your seniors. But I think it's so worth, like, why not just have a full-on phase training at the beginning of the school year, summer, where it's just a training devoted to the developmental stage of your next.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which again, you would think like, duh, but to just pause and acknowledge that and focus on that would be so beneficial.
Yeah. I know you started talking about parents.
Yes, let's jump in.
Parents.
As well. I'm thinking even in regards to that, allowing parents to know that I forgot what the word is, but I think it's zone of proximal development. But even communicating that well with their parents, knowing, hey, we're going to communicate with your students this way. So you talk about low-bearing fruit as well, but knowing, okay, I'm going to have an incoming 6th grader a little lower, needing to reach up a little bit to grab it to be in their zone, but then someone going into 9th grade or high school, it's got to be a little bit higher, and then someone even going into young adults and graduating, it's going to have to be even higher. So knowing, like, communicating that with parents is going to be key as well, because they're going to want to know, hey, how are you going to not make it so kiddish for my child? Or how are you going to get my child to understand the meat of the scripture and not just the milk anymore? So communicating to parents in a way of hitting their students at that different zone that they're in is going to be crucial as well, I believe. Good. So that's what I would say about that.
What else does it mean for parents? Anybody?
I think just helping parents understand their roles, you know, like I think when students transition to middle school, I always tell our parents, like, hey, just get them here, just get them here, just get them here. Like, if you lock in the relationships when they're in middle school, that's gold for when they're in high school, because all the trust is there.
Yeah.
The one area that I'm like, obviously my young adult brain is the shift from, oh, I'm no longer parenting my fully dependent child. It's now I'm parenting a somewhat independent, theoretically adult, which even that is like moving from traditional parenting to almost coaching. Yep. Like you're coaching your young adult to adult. So, and just helping parents understand there's even a shift for you. It's a big one. Good.
Well, friends, this was a grand slam of a conversation.
You've been waiting this whole time for that.
Brandon, Vivi, Brett, thank you so much for sharing your experience and for bringing up some really important things for all of us to be thinking about. And thank you all so much for listening. If you're listening right now and you are wrestling through attention or you're rethinking something, we would love for you to DM us at Orange Students on Facebook and Instagram and let us know what it is, because we'd love to rethink it with you. Yep.